if you're telling your audience or if you're spending your time online pushing a narrative that the Democrats are 99% Hitler, then I don't think that that's a constructive partner in a coalition. Like Cenk going on Jubilee, he said straight up, Joe Biden is evil and he acts as controlled opposition.
Cenk, Uyghur, and Anna were making sympathetic noises toward Biden in 2022 on student loan forgiveness, Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, look up their rhetoric on $15 an hour minimum wage and public option shit.
Yeah, I mean, sure they were critical, but they have to maintain like their brand too. They, you know.
Wait, hold on. That's the problem. You just hold on. You just described the problem. Thank you for saying that. You said they have to worry about their brand. Their brand is relentlessly shitting on Democrats and being completely uncharitable to them. History speaks. You're back. What's up?
Hi. I won't be long today. I just want to reiterate because I've said a lot of this before, and I don't want to bore your audience. I just want to reiterate my position that folks who are on the center left, who were soft on the genocide, who lost to Trump 2 out of 3 times, again, should the self-righteousness toward the left seems very, very strange to me. Obviously, we can't become Marxist-Leninists. We can't hand over the Democratic Party to people who think Russia was provoked into invading Ukraine, right? But you know, that's not the issue right now. The issue is people who, in fact, were in power, wielded power, lost, and funded a genocide. So I think just generally there needs to be a pivot left. It doesn't mean that Hassan becomes the Democratic Party, but a pivot left as opposed to this smug marginalization stance that you seem to take when, again, this moral destruction of the United States happened under the center left and with the supporting a genocide, and they also cannot win or be remotely popular. So again,
was this in specific response to something or just my general demeanor as of late?
Oh, yeah, kind of the debate, debate over the Marxist-Leninists or whatever, in the kind of the general position. Yeah, it's just like if we get to the point where there's a serious risk of people who want to nationalize, who want to essentially end capitalism taking over the party, then I would be with you. But we're not even close to this. This is the online sphere. A lot of these people are LARPing or they half mean it. And they're right and useful in a lot of ways. It's like libertarians. Anarcho-capitalism would be a unbelievable civilizational disaster if that were ever implemented. But it doesn't mean I won't work with libertarians on anything. And it also doesn't mean that that their ideological framework, as blinkered as it can be, doesn't give them insight sometime. I'd say the same thing about the left. I think the center left fell into Western man good, and it led us to horrible atrocities. And the left, which is hypercritical of the West, doesn't even like America, this epistemology gave them insights that the mainstream didn't have. So,
I don't know if you're aware, but lately I have been trying to be more precise with my language. So oftentimes when I talk about the people that I have a problem with, I would sort of conflate 5 different terms. So sometimes I would say lefty or socialist or tanky or Marxist-Leninist or Marxist or leftist. And I've recently tried to avoid that kind of generalization because I don't think it's helpful, by identifying what I call the black pill left. And these are the people that I'm focused on in terms of directly confronting and challenging. So to build off your point, so if someone shows up in my chat and they're a self-described democratic socialists, or maybe they're self-described like Marxists, and they're 19, 20 years old, they're learning about these systems in their undergrad studies, and they're taking a sort of academic interest in leftist philosophy. But this same person says they basically understand that the blue no matter who thing is a legitimate strategy right now that is somewhat necessary. Or if they demonstrate that they're willing to go out and actually like canvas for candidates, or if they say like, obviously I'm going to choose like the blue candidate, then I'm not going to like chase that person out of the party. But if the person that shows up in my chat is doing black pill lefty stuff, and I've sort of talked about certain behaviors that I think we can characterize these people by, but they all amount to just basically doing everything they can to spread a narrative about the Democratic Party that they're basically just as evil as they're like 99% Hitler to GOP is 100% Hitler. They don't actually want to do anything for their voters. Like that kind of rhetoric, I think, depresses people, and I think it obviously distorts the truth. It's a lot of these
Yeah, I
are
mean, they're limits. Like if people are legitimately calling for like rather than like some edgy joke like death squads or something or concentration camps or gulag. I mean, obviously that's not acceptable. I also think one issue where there should be a line in the sand is if people are indulging claims that like the Ukrainians, have brought their invasion on themselves and what have you. That should be a red line. But just because somebody has a theoretical hard left view, I think if they don't have any of these other problems, it seems a bit dogmatic and
no.
to just say, oh no, yeah.
No, but I wasn't talking about ideological dogma. I was talking about a particular set of behavior that that goes beyond politics. So it's not about like, did a democratic socialist, did a self-described progressive say the thing, did a Marxist say the thing? It doesn't really matter. But if you're telling your audience, or if you're spending your time online pushing a narrative that the Democrats are 99% Hitler, then I don't think that that's a constructive partner in a coalition. Like we're basically working against each other. I don't believe these things about the Democratic Party for all its flaws. I think the rhetoric and the hyperbole has gotten so extreme. I'll give you an example. When I was watching Cenk on Jubilee and when I was watching Kyle Kalinske a couple days ago in a video talking about Democrats' low polling numbers, both of them said these things. Both of them said that the Democrats, they don't actually want to give their voters anything. It's just a smokescreen. They just serve as a release valve. They're more or less controlled opposition for the Republican Party. That to me is worth confronting pretty aggressively right now, because I don't think that narrative, number one, it's not true. Number two, I think it helps lead to worse outcomes. Like that kind of rhetoric, I think in part enabled Trump to win the first and the second time.
I think there's a place for this kind of hyperbole. Obviously, I don't believe that the Democrat, Joe Biden or others are Hitler, right? That's not a reasonable analogy. But I'm not going to object to political hyperbole when Biden funded, the destruction of 4 to 5% of the people of Gaza in 22 months, right? Highest percentage of a war zone population killed in 21st century. So if you don't want to have this kind of heated hyperbole thrown at you, don't support genocide. In terms of politicians generally, I think the best way to see them is that they're mostly amoral. They're not particularly ideological. There are exceptions. There's some good people in politics, but generally they're kind of unscrupulous actors, and you need to move public opinion, pressure them, and then they will change, right? I mean, you're going to mention Gaza. I guarantee you that the 2028 primary is going to have people with very different views in Israel, Palestine, and Gaza than has been the case in Democratic politics before. It doesn't mean, by the way, that they're deeply morally concerned. It's just they understand which way the wind's blowing. And another issues too, like if the Democrats become more radical and intolerant, if you will, of anti-single payer position on healthcare, the party will change there too, because ultimately they, despite other institutional pressures, elite groupthink, donations, and so on, votes matter, right? So if the Democratic base is really passionate about an issue and 90% of them say, for example, single payer healthcare or you, the politicians will change. They're generally amoral,
Okay, let me try to demonstrate my thinking in a different kind of way. I'm just going to ask you like a series of questions, and then we can go from there. Do you agree that the 2026 midterms could be enormously consequential in terms of checking Trump and reining in his destructive actions?
Yeah, of course. If the Democrats win, that'll be helpful.
Okay. Do you agree that the extreme kind of rhetoric and hyperbole that I'm referring to has the potential and, in fact, maybe even likely depresses turnout for the Democratic Party?
I mean, I don't think I think the people who, I don't know if the people who believe that the Democrats are like running for office now are Hitler-like really represent that much of the public. I don't think they represent most leftists, for example. And some of this, I think, also is rhetoric rather than conviction, right? And if it's just rhetoric, if you're and it can be political hyperbole where you're disgusted with, again, the fact, if you look at this footage that was just released by Sky News, like Gaza's like completely razed, 4 to 5% of the population killed. Just nothing like this in the 21st century. If you're disgusted by that, you might engage in political hyperbole and call, these people Hitler who are insufficiently critical of Israel. Doesn't mean you're going to depress vote or that people really believe, that their Democratic candidate's the same as Hitler. Where I think it is helpful is getting the Democrats to reorient on an issue where there's a lot of passion, right? People care about the Gaza issue. I don't know what percentage of the public do, but there are people who are very passionate about this, and it's not 2%. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 8. I don't know, but there's enough people there that it could actually be a politically mobilizing issue, a moralizing issue, like a moral cause to stop this genocide and prevent the stateless people from enduring oppression at our hands and Israel's hands any longer. So
I
just don't agree that the left is unhelpful. I think overall they're politically helpful. If they were leading the party, I would agree with you. That would be a problem. But I think there should be more of a space for them in it. It's like salt. If you have some salt, the soup tastes better, right?
I'm sorry, somebody did a tangent. It's really loud. Give me just a moment.
No problem.
I don't mean to be rude.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, I think we've arrived at a pretty big disconnect here. Let me try to make the point in a different way, and then we can get on to the other questions. So, do you agree with the idea that the genocide Joe, killer Kamala rhetoric, in part, led to Trump winning? In some small part. I'm not saying it was the only reason, but honestly, it could be. But I'm not necessarily.
I think it's theoretically possible from some of the polling. I think it's plausible but unproven that the Gaza issue cost them the election. It could be false, but there's enough polling because it was a close election, right? People say it was a blowout. It was not.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So it sounds like we agree on that we don't know if it was necessarily outcome determinative, but in some part, it did contribute to less people voting for Kamala, therefore. In terms of arithmetic, like helping Donald Trump. And so
a poll that shows this is the plurality of people who didn't, a small plurality, 25, 30 or something like that, who didn't vote for Harris but had voted for Biden. This was their issue. So okay. This did matter.
So it did impact the outcome in some way. So then the next question I would ask you is, like, for example, okay, so like, do you agree that the situation in Gaza right now has gotten worse as Donald Trump has been president?
Relative to 2024, yeah. The very beginning, the very early bombing was the worst part of the war. But relative to 2024, yeah, it's gotten worse.
And you said that you agree that the
first month of bombing was the bloodiest month of bombing since the Korean War.
Right. I understand all that.
October 2023. Yeah.
I understand all that, but like
2024. The big thing that I've made this before. The big thing where Biden made a big difference was by the spring, he basically said you can no longer obstruct aid. Like, stop doing this. And they appear to have stopped. And if you look at starvation deaths, they were starting to go up in February 2024, March, and then by the summer they had almost been eliminated.
Yeah, there was a situation. There was a situation with UNRWA, and like that hurt the aid situation, but it did resolve within a couple of months. I mean, that's a big deal, right? But like, anyways, so if we agree on these things, then I feel like you have to take my position. I don't know how you could avoid taking my position. I think you're getting stuck feeling sympathetic for people that have a strong emotional reaction to what's happening in Gaza. And I think to a certain extent, like, that's fair. I've never claimed that these people are wrong to care about what's happening in Gaza. My question has always been one of tactics and strategy and political calculation. And, I'll ask you another question. I mean, I'm sure you agree, right? But like, most of the presidential elections that have happened in the modern era, certainly the last 4, have been decently close elections. Right?
Obama was the least close, but a huge blowout.
Obama in 2012, Trump in 2016, Biden in 2020, Trump in 2024. These were decently close elections, right? So like, my point is that the margins actually do matter. And I'm trying to get you to get to the point where it like, let's just say, I mean, I think that single issue voting is really, really harmful and bad. But if you're going to be a single issue voter on Gaza, then I don't understand how you could be okay with stuff like killer Kamala rhetoric in 2024, or think that I should try to actively court these people into the coalition when I know they're going to do the same thing for some other issue 4 years from now. So if we've identified that these people have actually hurt Democrats electorally and potentially in an outcome determinative way in 2024, then I think you understand the point that I'm and other people are making right now, which is that these are not constructive members of our coalition. In fact, you could probably get more value from being seen pushing them away than by welcoming them in. I don't think we should be understanding of that rhetoric.
We should. So the problem here is so I agree with you. It would have been better if she won. I'm confident of that, honestly. Like I'm extremely confident that that's the case. If you compare, like what happened with Biden is the beginning was just what he allowed is just insane. And then he did, to some extent, crack down, especially on the food, right? Yeah, Harris would not have been as bad as Trump has been. She wouldn't have allowed them to abolish the UN system and replace it with like this weird white trash Christian Zionist fake aid group where they're getting massacred every day. She wouldn't have allowed 2.5 months of blocking all food and medicine from coming in. Yeah, those are differences.
She wouldn't be talking about permanently occupying Gaza. You know, like that obviously would not have been.
There wouldn't have been like the Trump Gaza thing. So I agree with you. That's part of the reason I voted for her after considering not voting for her over this issue, is because I was convinced like it's not rational to think she wouldn't be better than Trump. The problem though is that you're putting so I agree with you. These votes may have been, we don't know, but it's possible they were outcome determinative. But you're putting the onus on the individual voter, whereas Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, I put far more responsibility on Biden for supporting what he described. He said in multiple interviews, including with Lawrence O'Donnell, he said at least the beginning of the war, the bombing was, quote, indiscriminate and carpet bombing. That's what he called it. He's called this on multiple occasions. So he knew in October and November 2023 that there was basically World War II style indiscriminate bombing, terror bombing going on. And in fact, when he actually mentioned this to Lawrence O'Donnell, when he told Netanyahu this is wrong, Netanyahu said, well, look at what you did in Hiroshima. And so Netanyahu didn't even deny. He just said, yeah, you did it too. So it's okay. It's okay when we do it. So the fact that after that, Biden continues to fund them and it won't even publicly say these things, what he knew, until after he leaves the presidency, right? I mean, I put way more moral responsibility there than on some, 25-year-old leftist or Arab American or Muslim or just a concerned citizen who doesn't have an ethnic connection, doesn't have hardcore politics. There are people like that who thought this was wrong, right?
I'm just asking. I'm just asking for people to strike a balance. So, like, the politicians, they're going to do what they do, and we can do things to try to influence them. We can demonstrate. We can. We can try to have a direct line with people, but the politicians are going to do what they do, and then the voters are going to make their decision every 4 years. When we're talking about presidents, every 4 years, and I understand what you're saying. Like, obviously, if Biden's Gaza policy was better, then I think he would have stood a better chance to maybe even, withstand that horrible debate performance. Or, if Kamala had broke from Biden sufficiently on Gaza, then maybe she would have done better. Maybe she would have even won the election, right? But the voters are an essential part of this democracy that we live in, and we all have agency. And I guess I'm getting a little frustrated because, you're acknowledging that their behavior was destructive. Their rhetoric was destructive. I'm saying destructive in the sense that it helped lead to Trump. And yet you don't seem to have any sort of space to criticize them or to push them in a different direction, to suggest different kind of rhetoric, to maybe highlight how this rhetoric led to a worse outcome with Trump. Like, you just don't want to touch that. It's like these small beans voters.
Here's why I'm sympathetic to them. Here's why. Now, I think I'll make two distinctions. So there's two groups of people. One are people who voted for Jill Stein or Donald Trump or whatever. I know people like this. They made a mistake. That's wrong. Or told people to do that. That was wrong. For Gaza too. Not just for other issues, but it was a bad decision for Gaza. So I agree with that. In terms of people who used harsh polemical rhetoric for Biden and Harris, I don't blame them because at the time, there's two issues. First, at the time they said these things, many of these people were trying to, through their polemical way, affect a change in policy, right? They weren't necessarily anticipating, okay, 8 months from now, the war will still be going on and the policy will still be to support Israel despite its atrocities. They were trying to effectuate a change in policy. Here's another thing. The second thing is, who knows? These people probably did make a difference, like a positive difference. So the big thing that Biden did, which I think we both agree on, is pressure to stop blocking or obstructing the passage of food. Right. That not only in terms of starvation deaths, but because a lot of people die from malnutrition who don't physically starve to death just because their bodies are weaker and they're less able to fight off disease that they otherwise could have. That policy probably saved thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives in 2024.
He didn't need to be. He didn't need to be pressured to do that, though.
He did. This was. They were the NSM 20, the government's own report, the Biden administration's own report. Blinken's. I'm not talking about the version that people who resigned wanted, but the one that was actually released by Blinken. It said Israel was not fully cooperating with attempts to provide food and medicine to the people of Gaza, and now it is. It so basically said the first 3 months of the war they were not cooperating, right?
No, but Biden, because
he allowed this to go on for months.
You know just as well as I do, because you read the same book that I read, that the Biden administration, from the very outset of the war, was pressing Israel on allowing aid into the country. Like they were the reason.
They did do it very quickly.
The Biden administration was literally the reason why aid started going into the country.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say he didn't need to.
But there's two phases.
I feel, but we're getting sidetracked here though, because I feel like you're sidestepping my point. Like you are acknowledging that kind of rhetoric and behavior was destructive and helped enable a second Trump term. And you're not connecting the dot that we should distance.
Acknowledging that. I don't know what would have happened.
No. Yeah, no, you did. Hold on, hang on. You did acknowledge that. You said it might. You said it. You said it. No, but hold on. Wait. You said that it might have been outcome determinative, but it definitely had an impact. It led to less people voting for. If you're on the left and you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, in terms of arithmetic, that's the same thing as giving a vote to Donald Trump.
Well, I agree that they should have voted for her. I made that point.
No, but you need to agree that it helped elect Trump for a second time.
It's possible someone who is listening to our conversation right now, if not for the fact that we're so engaging, wouldn't listen to the conversation. He's listening to it in the car and he hits a kid and kills a kid, right? So it's that there wouldn't be any moral responsibility for either of us for that, even if in some sense our conversation, our being so compelling to this driver, causes the accident.
I don't find this to be analogous. I don't find that to be analogous, dude. That's
if you're using. They don't know. You don't know everything that's going to happen when you're using polemical rhetoric against Biden and Harris in summer. You don't know. You're wanting to change policy. I think it's very different than a very discrete action, a very intentional action where I'm voting for Trump or for Stein, or I'm telling people not to vote for Harris. That's different, and I'm much more critical of that than like just harsh polemical rhetoric on Harris for this policy. I just don't think it's the consequences of that could be anticipated or foreseen in the way you think it could be.
Well, I think they were obviously trying to, in their minds, punish Kamala for the sins of Biden. I mean, first of all, it's fucking crazy that she was blamed for his foreign policy. That's crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I mean, she made the mistake of not distancing herself from Biden out of some misguided sense of loyalty, I think. But the fact that she inherited his baggage, like vice presidents don't determine that foreign policy. Any grown-up adult understood this, but they still blamed her. I mean,
she is a grown woman. You know, she's more intelligent, more privileged, she has more access to power. Like I just don't have. I agree with you that like in a legal perspective, she's not somebody who could be like prosecuted for war crimes the way Biden obviously could. I mean, he knew it was indiscriminate bombing and he's sentencing the armaments, right? Obviously he could be.
You don't think it was a little, you don't think it was a little crazy to just basically just give her all of Biden's baggage like that? I just found that to be so, like, I don't think that was genuine. Like, I don't think that was good faith at all. I think they were trying to threaten the administration, and they just saw her as, I guess, they just tied her to Biden. And the message that they were trying to send to people was that, you know, if you guys don't listen to us, we're going to punish you guys. First of all, what is the historical precedent for this working? Like, when has this ever worked for these types to withhold their vote for, you know, Gore or Hillary, or like, when has that ever led to positive outcomes? There's no historical precedent for this, like, serving their interests at all.
We don't have we have a very undemocratic voting system, because in theory you should be able to vote for third parties and then have those votes.
No, but that's not the system that we live in. We don't live in that system. So we live in,
so it's not the right decision. Yeah,
I agree that the system is not ideal. I think
rational system.
I understand that, but that's still, like, these people were aware of the system, and within the confines, within the framework of that system, they made a conscious decision to hurt Kamala Harris's chances of winning. And I just can't get you to connect the dot from that to, you know, they bear some of the blame for this. Literally, you know, the people being carted off to CCOT, the gay hairdresser that was raped and tortured in that prison is literally partly their fault. The 14 million projected dead, partly their fault. And they think that they think that because they didn't vote
voted for her.
No. Anybody who abstained or voted third party, it's literally all of that is partly their fault.
That seems a bit extreme. I think
it's just the truth. No, it's the truth. That's the truth.
At the individual level, one voter. I just think you're putting way too much. I mean, we're not going to agree on this. It's a normative disagreement. I think you're putting way too much, without relitigating all the points we made. I think you're putting way too much onus on individuals and not enough on elites. And the other point I'd make is I would just be less smug about in view of the moral and political failings of the center, who again are, as you acknowledged, I watched your Kyle video the other day, as you acknowledged, they're fucking really unpopular. The Democrats are not liked. Parties usually, something is deeply wrong here, because parties usually, when an incumbent president's in power and is starting to become less popular, as all the recent ones have, in their first year, they usually, the other party starts to gain favorability. This party's despised. Like, they fucked up.
My point with the Kulinski video is that the rhetoric that he was deploying in that video is one of the reasons why the Democratic Party polling is so low. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to sidestep altogether the shortcomings of the party or Biden himself. I have so many critiques of Biden. Like, I have so many sharp criticisms of Biden. Like, he's kind of still on my shit list for his part in Trump winning. So it's not like I never talk about the fact that Biden is largely responsible for Trump winning through his own decisions. But I guess the difference between you and me is that I still make time to call out rhetoric that I think is bad. Like Kulinski was just telling his audience things that just weren't true. Did you not see that part? Like, he was telling his audience that after Trump did the no, wait. He said that when Trump did the strike on the nuclear facilities in Iran, he said that no Democrats spoke up about it being illegal and unconstitutional. And it took me 2 seconds to find both congressional leadership in Jeffries and Schumer making statements calling it unconstitutional. He either lied or he misled his audience. But all those little things that he says, you know, that comment, that's just one of many things that he says that go beyond hyperbole, and it's just a lie. Like when he says Democrats aren't, literally no Democrats are doing anything to fight Donald Trump, he's either lying or he just
hyperbole.
Huh?
The problem with the Democrats is they haven't figured out an effective attack route, and they also haven't figured out, they don't seem to believe in anything. There is a perception with the public, and this is reflected in the polling data, that they don't believe in anything. And I think part of it is they don't have a clear identity.
If you want to forget
cultural stuff people were into for a while, woke or whatever, but I mean, and then Biden was kind of left wing economically, although he's an ex-New Democrat. It just ends up with and then Obama's the popular figure who, you know, is kind of in between a Clinton or Biden in terms of of how left-wing his politics were, but it's hard to know what he believes either. Like, the party doesn't seem to have a clear identity at all.
What do you think when, for example, MAGA Republicans say stuff like Democrats want to mutilate children? What do you think of that rhetoric?
I mean, that's not productive. That's not productive rhetoric. I have to say though, I'm concerned.
Well, hang on. Well, come on.
I'm concerned. I'm concerned about these. I'd have to read more, but I'm very concerned based on the. I mean, you have to understand. I live in Great Britain, and in this country, even with the center left, the transgender issue, while people are respectful of people's identities as they should be.
No, we're getting sidetracked here. We're getting sidetracked here. So if you don't want to indulge that example, then like what do you think about when MAGA was during Biden's presidency? What do you think about the fact that they were saying that he was literally demented to the point where he didn't know what he was and he was shitting his pants?
Again, that's hyperbole with the fact that he obviously was. Do you
disavow that hyperbole? Don't you think that is bad and destructive?
It's our country. Like
that's fine. That's fine. I agree. Like there's the hyperbolic comments happen, but I'm saying like, do you not agree that that was destructive? Like it actually worked. I mean, like that constant them telling people that he was literally demented. It literally worked, and it was one of the reasons why he fell off so much.
Well, if he had a good debate instead of not being able to speak coherent sentences, I think you're avoiding being critical of the right-wing hyperbole because you know that where I'm going with that. Like if you think that hyperbole is destructive, then you necessarily have to believe that Kyle saying that the Democrats are literally doing nothing is also destructive. It's just from a different perspective. I just don't think they have I think they have a really big messaging problem with the fact that everyone's doing their own thing. People also have different ideologies. Like you have competing ideologies, and they're trying to paper over all these serious divisions, and the result is a very muddled picture to the public, right? I mean, there are people who are saying that the cultural issues played a bit, and I think actually that's true. I mean, I'm critical of the public for that because while a lot of the woke stuff was dumb, like just. White man bad is not the same as like helping black people. And I'm sorry, some of the rhetoric was akin to that.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't vote on this basis either. It's like, if you're an adult, you shouldn't say, okay, I don't like woke, so I'm going to vote for Trump.
I think you're right there though. I think you're right up to the line of acknowledging that political rhetoric can have extremely destructive consequences. And if we're going to apply that kind of standard to MAGA people when they just fully lie about what the Democratic Party is, when they fully lie about Obama or whoever else they're on at any given moment, that's destructive and harmful rhetoric because it's just not true. It's just a very cynical kind of weaponization of like the ignorance in the electorate, like people that are not very engaged and they get their news consumption from bite-sized clips on TikTok or Twitter or whatever. But that same standard needs to be applied on the left wing as well. And they do their own insane rhetoric, like Cenk going on Jubilee and saying that Joe Biden, he said straight up, Joe Biden is evil and he acts as controlled opposition. And the Democratic Party, along with every other Democratic Party president, they only throw you scraps so you don't do a revolution. But they're lying to you because they don't care to you, because all they care about is the donors. Like that was his whole thing. We're beyond hyperbole. He is now establishing a framework, an entire framework for the Democratic Party. And it is, and according to his narrative that he's been pushing for literally 2 decades now, this is the rotten institution that is fundamentally evil, and they're lying to you that they care about your needs. That's beyond acceptable hyperbole to me.
I think there's a lot of truth to what he says. And here's one thing. I don't think the Democratic Party, I think the Republican Party is actually a lot more ideological than the Democratic Party. I think there are people in the Republican Party, elites, who really want to see a reduction of immigration, like despise the diversity in the country, right? I think that's definitely an ideological motivation of Republicans. Like the anti-immigration stuff, I think is real. It's not just rhetorical, right? Mm-hmm. Like the kind of machismo foreign policy, I think that's real, not just rhetorical. With the Democrats, I don't think they have a clear ideological commitment, and that leads. And nor do I think they have had it for, frankly, a while. And I think that leads to cynicism because it's not clear what they stand for.
I mean, to people that are engaged, like we know what the party stands for. What are we talking about? We're talking about raising taxes on corporations and wealthy individuals. We're talking about funneling that money back down to middle income and low income earners through social safety net programs. We're talking about like a more humane immigration policy platform. were talking about, and especially it's more pronounced in the last couple of years. No, they did not. They did not flip on this. They did not flip on this. They negotiated a bipartisan immigration bill with the Republicans after the level of influx that we saw at the border reached levels that the country had never seen before, and our system was just simply not built for that. And even normie Democrats who think that we should have more immigration, even they were like, okay, this is something that needs to be addressed in some way. But that doesn't mean they flipped their entire position on immigration. Joe Biden naturalized twice as many people when he was president than Donald Trump did. He issued way more visas for people to come into the country. So it's just objectively the case that Democrats are way more pro-immigrant than the Republican Party.
Yeah, they're more pro-immigrant, but the point is they just don't seem to have clear, emphatic ideological commitments the way the right do, and frankly, the way the leftists do. And I don't agree with a lot of what the leftists say on some of these. Now, in immigration, But
you can take a look at they introduced a bill. They introduced a bill when Biden was president in 2021. So you can look at what they want. They wanted to do like pathway to citizenship. They wanted to, like that bill. I'd have to look into the particular details, but that bill was like the Democratic version of immigration reform. And of course,
the 2024 bill, right?
No, the 2021 bill. They introduced a bill to overhaul our immigration system. It was blocked by Republicans in the Senate and it died. So all you got to do is just take a look and so you're saying, well, it's not really clear what the Democrats stand for, but if you're engaged enough to know politics, then you do know what the Democrats stand for.
It just seems like I agree that there are positions which you're articulating, but it seems like technocratic, half-hearted tinkering rather than like clear, bold, emphatic positions, which I think are attractive to people right now. I think that's why the left is growing. I think that's why the right is growing. I think the country's in a more ideological and radical mood, if you will. You know.
Well,
indulging some of that on specific issues like. Not in every issue, because that's what
Biden. You're describing what
is nuts.
You're describing what Biden did. Biden did that. He literally did that. He literally invited Warren and Sanders into the room to help craft the ARP. Like he full on said, okay, you know what? Like you guys helped me out. He was like good at building coalitions with them. They helped him win the election. And he literally invited them into the room. Like he did not want to do student loan forgiveness with executive fiat. He wanted to do that through a congressional bill.
This is actually correct. It's correct that he was moving in that direction, which is interesting at two levels. First level is if you look at the left-wing influencers in 2022, let's say before the genocide, they were kind of shyly pro-Biden. Right? They would like Kyle is a good example. They wouldn't.
He's like the only example, by the way. You're saying but
no. Like Cenk was. Even like Hassan made some sympathetic noises. The Gaza issue ended it. So that's the first thing.
No. Now you're rewriting history. You are because you're ignoring the fact that they were like he promised 2,000. We only got 1,400, and he promised the $15 an hour minimum wage. Why didn't you fire the parliamentarian and Joe Manchin's mom? He promised a public option. He didn't even go for it. They were still doing that during his first 2 years. I mean, there was a brief moment where Kyle got wildly based and took Breonna Joy Gray to task. But the black pill lefty space, the one that I'm talking about, they were all complaining about Biden all the time. They might have given him flowers every once in a while, but he moved left on so many issues, and it didn't fucking matter to these people.
I bet you if you found data. Now I don't know. I can't claim to know data this refined. So let's caveat that with I'm speculating. But my suspicion is that if you found data of Biden's approval among people who are say they're leftists or Democratic Socialists or AOC voters, let's say, or whatever, or Sanders supporters,
I'll bet you he was underwater.
Much higher in 2022.
I'll bet you, he was high. But I'll bet you he was. But I'll bet you he was still underwater. I'll bet you he was still sub 50% for self-described.
He was like high among them, and then he went to low after Gaza specifically, because this is cares a lot.
You're rewriting history. I mean, somebody said in chat, but these people were the same people that blamed him for Roe v. Wade. I mean, these people were literally blaming him for Roe v. Wade.
Crystal's another one. She was very cynical of Biden in 2020 and barely voted for him. She did vote for him.
There was a glimpse of this, though. There was only a glimpse in 20. They started to a glimpse in 2022, and then it was just.
Noam Chomsky's another example. I mean, he's now. He's kind of no longer with us mentally, sadly, but he was saying positive things about Biden. So that's like very left-wing intellectual who I have problems with, by the way. I don't like Chomsky's commentary on Srebrenica or Ukraine. So I'm not saying I co-sign everything he said, but nevertheless, very left-wing guy, major intellectual. He was basically pro-Biden until I don't think he was alive, cognitively speaking. I'm being kind of cruel in how I talk about it. During the Gaza issue, but he was sympathetic early. So no, there was more of a
but
look at Congress, look at AOC and Sanders, and they were even after they were even pro Biden when they shouldn't have been. Right?
No, but the people that I'm talking about, they're relentless in this pursuit of this narrative, this narrative that the Democratic Party are fucking evil. And that didn't stop when Biden became president. You're right. You can find clips here and there of Kyle and Crystal giving Biden flowers for like labor stuff. They really liked his NLRB pick and what she was doing. They liked his union support. I mean, all that's true, but there was still this underlying black pill analysis. The fact that they were, excoriating him and demonizing him because he didn't blackmail Joe Manchin by threatening investigation of his daughter to pass they were still doing that shit throughout the first 2 years of Biden's presidency, well before Gaza. And I just feel like you're really rewriting history here. And this is the problem that I've identified recently. I've been talking about it for a really long time, but I'm trying to give it more like specific terminology so we can be more sort of we can more efficiently discuss these ideas.
Both Cenk Uygur and Anna were making sympathetic noises toward Biden in 2022 on student loan forgiveness, Inflation Reduction Act.
Well, look up their rhetoric on $15 an hour minimum wage and public option shit.
Yeah, they were critical, but they have to maintain like their brand too. But they were much more. If you don't know,
wait, hold on. That's the problem. You just described the problem. Thank you for saying that. You said they have to worry about their brand. That's the problem. That's the exact problem. Their brand is relentlessly shitting on Democrats and being completely uncharitable to them. That is a problem, and that is what I'm trying to
there needs to
confront.
Be that I'm not going to use the term vanguard, but there needs to be that left flank. The point is, look, the ultimate point is we're going to go in circles here, and I want to make a few comments about Loner Box if you'll allow me to. I know he's your friend, so you don't have to, but.
We got to wrap the conversation up. So if you want, you can make a final point. That's fine. I'll listen. I don't want to get into Loner Box. We can talk about that.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So no, but the only point I'd make on this issue is, I think that having the hard left, giving them some space, and also engaging in more reflection on the political and moral problems of the center left, rather than the smug attitude, is the better political and ethical approach. That's basically where we disagree.
Yeah. We definitely disagree. But yeah, thanks for the conversation. Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye. I gotta, I think I'm getting better, but I gotta sit down and organize my thoughts a little bit more. I do think I'm getting better, but I the whole goal is to be just much more streamlined about these things. That's why I'm really drilling things right now, like Black Pill Left, and I'm like the various behaviors, Green Lantern, and like. I want to be able to like paint the picture really clearly, and I want people to be able to like quickly understand what I'm alluding to, because otherwise you got to get into the weeds. You got to start giving examples. You got to start giving like 10 examples. I got to tell you, I'm seeing people just organically show up in my mentions referring to Black Pill Left, and I see that shit and I'm like, what's a self-satisfied face? Feel good. I see people using that language. I was like, ooh, it's working. People are using the words. You could cut through that shit over and over, and he couldn't handle it. I mean, the big disconnect there, obviously, is he along with I guess like Econoboy was espousing the same thing, where like, they take the position that the rhetoric itself is actually not that big of a deal. And my contention these days is when we look at the Democratic Party number, the numbers, like the approval numbers, and how they've changed specifically since 2015, this complete free fall of public support. I think that the lefty media space, the Black Pill lefty media space, I think that they have a role in that. Like this chart is just so fucking wild to me. It's such an unbelievable chart. This happened right here like, here's why this chart doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Because what has been the biggest complaint since, well, I guess like even back here, the biggest complaint about politics in America is the impact that neoliberal policies had on working class families. So like throughout the 70s and the 80s, wages were just completely stagnant. Real wages were, there was no real wage growth for like 20 to like 30 years, 20 to 30 years, like 20 years. It was like the late 70s into the like early 2000s. So, we'll say 25 years of just stagnant wage growth. Real wage growth, and neoliberalism, and especially that was a critique from progressives, from progressives and lefties. The big word was neoliberalism. They fucking hated neoliberal policies. And then Biden comes in and he's the least neoliberal, most pro-labor president of my lifetime by far. Like, not even close. He is just so clearly ahead of every other president in terms of breaking away from neoliberal policies and adopting policies that were way more populist, quite frankly. And then he also delivers stuff like historic investment in climate, codifies gay marriage, and then what happens? Among support with Democrats. Biden was the one that was promised. Biden fulfilled like the promise of like the aspirational hope and change of the Obama campaign in 2008. Biden came along and actually did those policies in a way that was, the ACA was based, and we need to give Obama flowers for the ACA. That was enormous. But Biden he came in and he was like, he was trying to emulate FDR style politics with a 50-seat majority in the Senate. And his approval just goes, among Democrats, just goes, you can't explain this. I don't think you can explain this just with inflation. I don't think you can explain this just by the Afghanistan withdrawal. I don't think you can explain this by, the Delta variant coming in and pissing people off because we all thought we were past the pandemic. And then all of a sudden they're doing, semi-lockdown measures again. And people blamed him. Like, all of that plays a part in this. But in terms of like the intra-party opinion of the party, he just nosedives after being the most progressive president of my lifetime. I mean, like, how do you explain that without addressing the role? I can't prove this. And maybe this is just if this was a scientific sort of proposition, if this was a scientific theory, people would laugh it off because it's just unfalsifiable and it would be bad science. I can't prove this. There's no way for me to prove this. There's just simply no way for me to demonstrate that alternative media being so biting about the Democratic Party, which ratcheted way the fuck up in 2015. Those voices got way more loud. You started to see more creators started to come up and become relevant during that time, and they were all doing this fucking black pill shit. And when I try to bring this up to people like History Speaks, he takes the econoboy position, which is just like, well, it doesn't really matter that much, I kind of get the sense, and they don't say this, but like, I feel like during that conversation, History Speaks was kind of being like, you kind of just have to let them blow off steam, and even though they're extreme in their rhetoric, which I would go further than that, they just lie, right? But like, if I wanted to use his language, like, even though they're extreme in their rhetoric, like, we need that presence on the left to like push us in a leftward trajectory. Which I don't even disagree with in concept, but if all you're doing is nipping at the heels of the party by lying about what is actually happening, it's just not true that the Democrats didn't push back when the Iranian strikes happened. It was just a lie. I don't know if it was a lie or Kyle just didn't know. He's so engaged that it's hard for me to believe that he didn't know this. So that's why I have to call it so. If you want to be a part of a left flank that is trying to put pressure on the party to move in a certain direction, I agree that is necessary. I believe in progressive politics or policies. But if the way that you're doing it is by lying or constructing this narrative about the Democratic Party that they're this evil institution that's fundamentally not that different from Republicans, that's not pressure. You're just an anchor at that point. You're not nipping at our heels and getting us to run left. You're just a fucking political anchor at that point. You're now just dead weight as we're walking uphill with strong winds pushing us backwards. They're just saboteurs. You're just sabotaging the party at that point.